sounds better. Hello, hello. Okay, so this is just audio testing stuff that's going to be happening in the background. I don't know how well everything is going to sound. I'm starting to yawn already. Every time I start a recording, I start to yawn. It's every time. So yeah, I may or may not sound different depending on which audio source, depending on which audio source I use. Either one kind of has some white noise, like, just sounds in the background no matter what. And I don't know if there's any way that I can avoid that. So I don't know. We'll just see. Realistically, if I have other sounds in the background, it probably won't be as loud. Or if I have music in the background, though I don't know what music I would have in the background or how I would get that music. Also, I don't think I need it to make the video entertaining, but it would be interesting. I do not have any for my other videos. I mean, I do have some of the audio from the Halo 3 ODST OST stuff, but we'll see. Anyways, I also don't know how I'm gonna do this video in terms of editing. I think I'll just have to talk. This is going to probably be on my discussions and analysis, discussions and explanations channel. I don't know how I could make this video entertaining. I think it's just going to have to be an explanational video, and it's not going to be particularly entertaining. And that's okay. Not every video has to be entertaining. Anyways. Moving on, here, I gotta yawn, so we'll yawn one last time. I always yawn whenever I do recordings. It's really funny. Okay. Hello, welcome. Today, is that gonna really be my intro? Okay. Hello everybody, and welcome to another explanation video. Today I will be going through my update suggestions for Town of Us / Among Us. Most of it is Town of Us, but there are a couple of things that could just be applied to, vanilla Among Us. So, the whole point of this video is to focus on what kind of features could be added to make Town of Us a better mod or a better gaming experience. I don't think that there's going to be anything particularly controversial in here because unlike, any kind of suggestions you can make for other games, when it comes to Town of Us and Among Us in general, you create the game. So more options just means a better game. If you don't like new options that they add, you don't need to add them. You don't have to, that's one of the cool things about this kind of mod is that you can just add whatever, and if people don't like it, they just don't have to turn it on. Now, this video isn't going to be specifically looking at bug fixes. There's a lot of bug fixes that need to happen with both Town of Us and Among Us. For example, voting is not visible. That's a real problem. The airship map is a bit buggy. The assassin rule doesn't work. I gotta yawn again every time. Okay. Sorry, face. The assassin role just straight up doesn't work. The investigator role gives you a very low frame rate and makes it very unplayable. When you're playing with the arsonist, if somebody leaves, then you can't win the game. You can't douse people and ignite it or whatever because it's just bugged out. All of those changes should be fixed. I believe they're aware of all of these changes. So, as soon as they can get to that, that would be great. That being said, I have played a lot of Town of Us, both in the newest update and in previous updates, but more so in the newest update. I've only played bits and pieces of Town of Us in the previous updates. So, everything that is going to be said is going to be taking into consideration the newest update. So, which would be 2.1.4. So, with that being said, let's get into the update suggestions. Number 1. Even if a Number 1. I laughed when I said it. Oh, I just pressed the wrong key. Number 1. Even if anonymous voting is on, dead players can see who votes for whom. Okay, so this one is fairly simple. For whatever reason, okay. So this one should be relatively straightforward. Dead people should be relatively omniscient. They should be able to see everything that's going on. They should be able to see all of the roles, and once again, assuming that I'm struggling. Okay. That's okay. Good thing this is an edited video and I'm not just uploading this entirety. I'm just yawning like every 5 seconds. Okay. Even if anonymous voting is on, dead players can still... I should write the word still. And I should say whom. That'll help me out. Okay. Attempt 5. Even if anonymous voting is on, dead players can still see who votes for whom. So, as we all know in Among Us, whenever you're dead, for the most part, you're dead. So if there is a meeting, for example, generally speaking, you have an idea of everything that's going on. If you have the dead can see everyone's roles kind of modifier on, then you can get a general idea of everything that's going on. That being said, even if anonymous voting is on, dead players... No. Even if anonymous voting is on, dead players should still be able to see who is voting for who, because you can't see everything that's happening. I feel like that's a relatively fair option. That should be, actually, I would say less of an option and more of a thing that's kind of forced. This is like the one thing that's more, I think it should be forced rather than an option. Now, I believe that this is like pretty much the only thing that I would recommend that should just be applied to regular Among Us, even outside of Town of Us. Even in regular vanilla Among Us, this should be a feature. That being said, if the modders at Town of Us can fix this, that would be cool. I would like to see that happen. But yeah, that should be a thing. Even if you're dead and anonymous voting is on, you should be able to see who is voting for whom. Also, that reminds me, did I mention that as part of the bugs that the votes didn't work? Well, that should be fixed. I'm pretty sure they're well aware of most of the bugs. Okay. Number 2. If dead... Okay, so what I should say is, because it makes sense in writing, but if I'm going to say it, I should write it down properly. If the modifier... Is it a modifier? If the setting... Okay, yeah. Okay. Number 2. If the setting dead can see everyone's role is on, dead players can see who the executioner's target is. So, whenever you're, playing a standard whenever you're playing a standard Town of Us game, you can see who everyone's role is if this setting is turned on. So I want to go on top of that and add one extra layer to it, because it's the only bit of information that the dead players don't have, and it's that the dead cannot see who the executioner's target is. Now, realistically, I don't know how they could apply this in a sensible way. Maybe they have like an X over the character of... I don't know how they would apply this, but I do think it would be nice for the executioner's target to be visible to all of the dead players if that setting is turned on. Number 3, and this is a big one, use limit counts. Sorry, it's not use, it's use. Very specific, okay. Number 3, and this is a big one, use limit counts for many of the characters. So as an additional option, rather than having a cooldown, they simply can only use it a limited amount of times. This would be an extra option for the Swapper, Medic, Engineer, Seer, and Time Lord. These roles have the potential to be OP, so having the option to limit their effect without having them be OP or requiring an assassin would be nice. As an example, rather than having the Engineer only be able to use his or her ability once per round or per game, instead, they should have a limited amount of uses counter from 1 to 7 and infinity, with 1 essentially being 1. What? With 1 essentially being 1, the current once per game. I think. Get rid of this 1. With 1 essentially being the current once per game rule, and infinity being the once per round rule. The limit regardless, what I should say is regardless, comma, oh my god, that was loud. Regardless, the limit is still once per round either way. So even if you have it set to infinity, that doesn't mean that you can, use your ability more than once per round for the Engineer. It's still once per round as a maximum, but instead of you having to be able to use it an infinite amount of time, instead you only get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 uses, or infinite uses, which would be basically the way and how it works now with once per round. Number 4, this is also a big one. Being able to use multiple of the same character in a game. This one is simple. Along the character stats for every special role, except imposter roles, is the ability to choose how many of that specific role can be in that game. And the percentage chance of that role is also applied to the second, third, or fourth of that role. If you want, you can have all innocents being spies, for example. Or, as another example, you can have 2 engineers in a game. Instead of only being able to have 1 of each role, you can have multiple of each role. You can have 3 seers, which would be overpowered, but I'm just saying, as an additional option, that would be cool. Number 5. Let me start it. Number 5, the option for the executioner win condition to be satisfied even after the death of the executioner. Now, like I said, this is an option. If you want the executioner to be able to win even after they have died, this is a way that it could possibly be done. If you don't like that, if you don't like that, you can simply just turn that setting off and then continue to play the game the way you want. But if you do want the executioner to be able to win even after they've already died, this should be a good setting. This would be a good setting, is what I should have said. Okay, let me say it then. This would be a good setting. Okay. Number 8. A rework to the modifiers, including modifiers to modifiers. This one is the least important, but would be a nice touch. So here are the following ways the modifiers would work. So with Torch, this reduces the effects of the lights being sabotage. Your following options would be 25%, 50%, 75%, and 100%. If you selected 100%, then it would essentially be the way that it works currently. But you could also additionally make it so that you only lose your vision by 25% or 50% or 75% as additional options. Deceased. Killing the deceased increases the cooldown, except for the Hitman. The Hitman is a special role we'll get into later. Options. So the options for this one would be 200%, 250%, and 300%. 300% would essentially be the same way as it works currently. So as you know, the way that the deceased works now is if you kill the deceased, whoever the killer is gets a 300% increase to their kill cooldown would be increased to 300%, or 3 times as much as it is. Instead of it always being 3 times as much, this would essentially give you the option to make it only 2 times as much, or 2.5 times as much, stuff like that. The Flash. increases the movement speed of the affected player. The options would be 150%, 200%, and 250%. If you selected 200%, that would essentially be the same way as it works currently. So as you know, right now the Flash only ever increases the movement speed by 2 times. This would give you the option to make it by 1.5 times or 2.5 times, stuff like that. With all the other modifiers, that being the Tiebreaker, Drunk, and Giant, and Button Berry, there are no changes. I think that they don't need to be changed in any way. They could just work the way that they work currently. Number 9. At the end of the game, it would show a screen with everyone's role instead of just showing a screen for the victors. I don't know if this can be done easily, but it sounds... If it can't be done easily, then how about instead of the game ending when a victory condition is met, instead it will show the screen... Instead it will show the screen of everyone's role from the meeting room and when the game ends. Oh my god, okay. Restart that. Number 9. Number 9. At the end of the game, it would okay. Number 9. At the end of the game, it should show a screen with everyone's roles, instead of just a screen for the victors. If this can't be done easily, then how about, instead of the game ending when a victory condition is met, instead it will show the screen of everyone's roles from the meeting room, and then the game ends. So, that way, even if you'd never died, you could easily figure out who everyone's role is, instead of having to go into the lobby and asking who is who, or potentially just never finding out. This is how it works currently in the versions of Gmod TTT that the Yogscast and Achievement Hunter use. So, finally, for number 10, other than balancing changes, there's also some potential other extra roles and modifiers that may or may not work out, but if they don't, they can always be removed. So, here are the extra roles. First off, we have the Foreseer. This one's fairly simple. They will get a flash screen 5 seconds after someone has died. Oh, let me actually cancel that. Just as a disclaimer, all of these role names are more or less just placeholders. If the developers of Town of Us think that there's a better name or a better way that these roles could fit into it, remember these are all just suggestions, right? If they have a better name for these roles, or if they want to modify the way the roles work, that's totally fine. I'm just throwing suggestions out there, right? Excuse me. So, to start off, we have the Foreseer, who will be a crewmate, or is a crewmate role. The Foreseer will get a flash on screen 5 seconds after someone has died, including an arrow in the general direction where it happened for a short time. By default, this time will be 2 seconds. So, as an example, if somebody kills on the top left of the map and you're in the bottom center of the map, then whenever you get an arrow, there'll be an arrow showing up to the top left for approximately 2 seconds to give you an idea where somebody has died 5 seconds ago. Now, like I said, this is 5 seconds ago. This is not immediate. Theoretically speaking, you could work with a Time Lord to try and bring somebody back, but it also depends on how you have the Time Lord, how far the Time Lord goes back. You know, it all depends on the setting you have. But then again, the same thing can be done using vitals, so I think that this would be a nice change. Basically, it would be like somebody died over there, and, you know, if you want to report the body, you can go ahead and report it. Or if you want to try and avoid that area, you can also try to avoid that area. Stuff like that. Alright, next up we have the Panther, who is also a crewmate role. This one is super simple and probably the lamest out of all the roles, but it does have some potential interesting things that can happen. The Panther will only have to do half the amount of tasks as everyone else. So, for example, if the default amount of tasks is 6, the Panther will only have to do 3. And this number is rounded up, so let's say it's 7. Instead of it being 3.5 tasks, it would be 4 tasks. It's always going to be rounded up, but it's going to be generally approximately half the amount of tasks as everyone else. Now, what does this mean if you have one task? That means obviously you have to do that task. You can't, like I said, this number is being rounded up. So, yes, that is how it's going to work. The game changer, another crewmate role. For the next couple of them, they're all going to be crewmate roles. I'll explain when it's not a crewmate role, but yes, the game changer. I really like this role. The game changer is immune to a wide variety of specific attacks and actions from various special roles. And this is a pretty large list, so I'll go over it. Here's the list. They are immune to being shot by the sheriff, being swapped by the swapper, being shifted by the shifter, being cleaned up by the janitor, being sampled by the morphling, and having their bodies dragged by the undertaker. In the case of both the sheriff and the shifter, after an attempt give me a second. I said attempter instead of attempted. Did I misspell attempted? No, I don't think I did. Anyways. In the case of both the sheriff and the shifter, after an attempted kill or shift, both players will live, but this will still count as an attempt and will reset the cooldown. That being said, the game changer can still be targeted by the assassin, so if the morphling is able to work with the assassin and figure out that, hey, this is the game changer, that will not work out well for the game changer. But otherwise, they're immune to a lot of different special roles, so there you go. I really like that role. That's one of my personal favorites. Alright, next up we have the Safeguard. This one's kind of lame, but it has the potential to be really cool. The Safeguard will have a personal shield that they can temporarily activate that will protect them from all damage for a short time. I like how I say all damage, like they can take a small amount of damage. It protects them from being killed. Or shifted, or stuff like that. That's what I'm getting at, right? I may have worded that confusingly, but basically all the kind of stuff. Technically, that would also mean that it protects them from getting shielded by the medic, but, hey, priorities, right? Anyways, it protects them from all damage for a short time, with a cooldown afterwards. By default, the following apply but can be modified. The usage time is 3 seconds. The usage cooldown is 30 seconds. These are other modifiers that can be changed. Who can see the shield during attack? So, let me also specify that whenever they do get attacked, and it's unsuccessful, which obviously it will be, what I should say is the attack notification, not shield. So, by default, nobody can see the attack notification during an attack. However, some other options that can be enabled in the settings include the Safeguard, who can see the attack, or the Safeguard, who can see the attack notification during an attack, or the attacker, or both. Visibly, this shield will look identical to the shield of the medic, and the attack screen, if turned on, would look the same as well. And when I say attack screen, I mean attack notification. Just so that's clear. I feel like that might have been a little confusing, but that's okay. So, another crewmate role, we have the Haunter. When this player is killed, their killer will glow for a short amount of time, making it obvious who killed them. By default, this amount of time is 5 seconds. I wanted to add, I should add at the beginning. Inspired by the Phantom from Gmod. A lot of these were inspired by Gmod TTT roles. Okay, so start from the top. Next up, we have the Phantom, who is another crewmate role. The Phantom, the Haunter, not the Phantom. Next up, we have the Haunter, who is another crewmate role. Crewmate role? Next up, we have the Haunter, another crewmate role. Inspired by the Phantom from Gmod TTT, when this player is killed, their killer will glow for a short amount of time, making it obvious who killed them. By default, this amount of time is 5 seconds, but can be changed in the settings. Also, whenever their killer is thrown out, killed, or disconnected, all players alive and dead will see the word killer in black, along with their name, the next time they are in a meeting. So, for example, if Red kills Blue, and Blue is the Haunter, if Red either dies, gets thrown out, or gets disconnected, the next time that everyone is in a meeting, it will show killer underneath that person. So everyone will know that person killed the Haunter. Alright, now we have the Fraud, another crewmate role. This one is inspired by the Glitch from Gmod TTT. I know this is getting confusing because a lot of the names were taken, that's why I went with the Fraud. Anyways, the Fraud will be an additional imposter on the imposter's roster. What that means is if by default you have 3 imposters, if a Fraud is in play, there will be technically 4 imposters that will be invisible, or there will be 4 imposters that are... There will be 4 imposters that will be visible to the other imposters. Of course, one of them is actually a fraud, so there's still only 3 imposters, but they won't know which one is the real imposter or not. He or she will appear as any of the randomly available roles, and may even potentially take a fake role from a real imposter. That meaning, if there's only 3 imposter roles available, they could take the Undertaker, for example, and force a real imposter to be only a vanilla imposter rather than being a special role. Just to clarify what I mean by that. So, what is the role of the Fraud? They can vent, but cannot kill or use any of the special abilities of the imposter that they're supposed to be imitating. So it's up to the real imposters to find out who the Fraud is. When the Fraud is in play, the assassin can target and kill their teammates. I don't know why I specified like that. When the Fraud is in play, what I should have said is the imposters can kill their teammates, and the assassin can target and kill their teammates. Okay, that's what I should have said. When the Fraud is in play, the imposters can kill their teammates, and the assassin can target and kill their teammates. But if he or she falsely assumes that a real imposter is the Fraud, the assassin will be killed instead. The Fraud does not know who the real imposters are, though they will know what their fake role is. For example, if you are the Fraud, it might potentially say Fraud-Swooper, or Fraud-Undertaker, for example. And will of course be visible from the dead players, assuming that the option is turned on. Alright, last, the final of the crewmate roles, we have the Detective. Inspired by the Detective role in Gmod TTT, if the Detective reports a body, the Detective will be notified the role of the body they reported. Other additional options includes if everybody knows the role, on or off, and the victims of the reported body will be shown either off, or to the detective, or to everyone. This, well, once again, kind of shows, it replicates how it works in Gmod TTT. Just in case if it wasn't clear what I was getting at, when it says everybody knows the role, what that means is that whenever you go into a meeting and the detective reports the body, if everybody knows the role is turned on, that means that the person who died will have their role underneath them. So if the engineer is killed and the detective reports the body of the engineer, everybody in the lobby will know that the engineer has died, alive or dead. Assuming that this option is turned on. If the person of the body that they reported is somebody who is killing other people, then all of the victims of the reported body will also be known, and this could be either known to only the detective or known to everyone, or it could be known to nobody, assuming that you turn that setting off. Alright, now the big one. Our one and only neutral role, the righteous. This one is really complicated and kind of a doozy, so just try and stick with me as I explain how this role works. This player simply needs to make it to the top 2 or 3, depending on the number of starting imposters, without getting voted out or dying to the glitch. So, the imposters will know who this player is, but the imposters cannot kill this player, even with the assassin, and if they try, he or she will be killed his or herself. The imposters can still win by sabotage, however. But if they kill such that the righteous is one of the last 2 or 3 alive, the imposters lose and the righteous wins. If the game starts with 1 or 2 imposters, the righteous has to be... If the game starts with 1 or 2 imposters, the righteous has to be one of the final 2 alive, with an asterisk. And one of the final 3 if it starts with 3 imposters. If there are 3 imposters alive alongside the righteous, or if the game starts off with 2 imposters and the 2 imposters are alive alongside the righteous, the imposters win automatically. If the game starts off with 1 imposter though, things get interesting. Then, the righteous can only win if the single imposter gets thrown out, and there are 2 remaining players. So if the last 2 players are the righteous and the imposter wins. But if the last 2 players alive are the righteous and a non-imposter role, then the righteous wins. That being said, if the righteous is one of the last 3 alive, and both of the remaining players are non-glitch neutrals, then the righteous wins. But if there is even 1 crewmate alive, and no imposters alive, and more than 3 players in the game alive, then the crewmates win, assuming the righteous is also alive. Regardless of the amount of potential neutral roles. But if there isn't a single crewmate, imposter, or glitch left, then the imposter... If there isn't a single crewmate, imposter, or glitch left, then the righteous wins, regardless of the amount of non-glitch neutrals. Obviously, just like other neutral roles except the glitch, if the imposter gets thrown out before the win condition is satisfied, then the righteous loses and the crewmates win. Any glitch must be dead in order for the righteous to win. Any glitch must be dead in order for the righteous to win. And if the glitch and the righteous are the last 2 remaining, the glitch wins. I know, it's kind of complicated, so here's a chart to more easily demonstrate the win conditions if there is a righteous. So, if you're looking at this chart, you can kind of see exactly what I was going for. We have the different possible win conditions, and any of the scenarios that aren't on the screen means that the game isn't over yet because none of the potential win conditions have been satisfied. Notably, as you can see, the crewmates can only win if either they throw out the righteous and the righteous is dead, or it's just the righteous, 1 crewmate, and the rest are either crewmates or non-glitch neutrals. This will change, however, if the righteous is alive and all of the other players are non-glitch neutrals, which is NGN. That is what it stands for, is non-glitch neutrals. The parentheses along the number of imposters, that is to show how many starting imposters would have to be in that game in order for the imposter to count, right? So, for example, in order for the imposters to win with the righteous still being alive, with 3 imposters, all 3 imposters have to be alive. If the game starts off with 2 imposters, both the imposters have to be alive, and if there's only 1 imposter, then that single imposter has to be alive, because obviously. One notable thing is that the righteous will win if they are alone with any non-glitch, except if that non-glitch is an imposter. But if it's an imposter in a game where they're the sole imposter. However, if it's an imposter in a game where it starts off with 2 imposters, then the righteous wins. But if it's one imposter that the game starts off with, then the imposter wins, if that makes sense. Yeah. If anybody who sees this says, "Hey, this is way too complicated," and you wish to change it, I don't really blame you. It is complicated. I like how the dynamic of this with the righteous rules works out. I think it's really fundamentally interesting. Though I can understand if somebody were to look at this and be like, this is way too complicated to implement, I don't want to implement it. I know it might make sense, but we want to change it up a bit so that it's easier to understand, and anybody who's actively in a match has a basic idea of who could potentially win, because it's so confusing with the settings. But I do think these settings are more interesting. Alright, moving on to the last two roles. These are both imposter roles. We have the Hitman. This one is inspired by the Assassin from Gmod TTT. The Hitman has a single target and will want to kill that target. If the Hitman kills his or her target, they get half the kill cooldown. If they kill a non-target, they get double the kill cooldown. So kind of like the Underdog, except it's not reliant on killing a specific person, or it is reliant on killing a specific person rather than how many of your imposter buddies are left. But in a vein somewhat similar to the Underdog. And last but not least, we have the Converter. This one has potential for some hilarious moments and some infuriating moments, and I think this is why it's so interesting. The Converter can convert any neutral role to become a regular imposter with no special modifiers by being next to him or her and using the Convert button. So on the screen you'll have a button that is the Convert button. If you click the Convert button while being an appropriate distance away from another player, then it will convert them, assuming that they are a neutral role. When I say neutral role, I mean any neutral role. So even if they're the glitch, they will be converted. If they're the executioner, they will be converted. So it's actually kind of up to the imposters to try and figure out who any potential neutral roles are, like the Jester or the Righteous, for example. But this is a high-risk, high-reward scenario, because if the Converter attempts to convert a crewmate role, the Converter will die instead. So, it's kind of somewhat similar-ish to the Shifter, except not quite exactly how it works. I could also say this is somewhat kind of inspired by the Hypnotist from Gmod TTT, except different in a number of ways. Notably that the target is alive, rather than how in Gmod TTT the target would be dead. The person that's being converted would be dead. I apparently was going to write more modifiers, and I just couldn't think of any. But this video has been long enough. I've explained a lot of the things I wanted to explain. I hope it was really fun coming up with and thinking of all of these potential updates for Town of Us. I love Town of Us. I recently just took a small break from it, but I still love it at its core, and I think if these changes were to be made to Town of Us, it would be an even better game. So, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you like these ideas, be sure to tell the developers of Town of Us, or the mod team, go to polis.gg and let them know that, hey, these are suggestions you would like to see. Thank you guys, and I have other videos coming out. Some are related to Among Us, some aren't, who knows. Thank you, and have a good day.